One of the men who would have been responsible for that in the past years is Admiral Mark Montgomery. He commanded Carrier Strike Group 5 in the past, is now with us from the Foundation for the Defense of Democracy. Also, General Teichert with us as well. Admiral, to you first. This is what the Navy trains for. This is why they are all there. The Iranians love to put out videos of all of their fancy equipment. Is it really a match for the U.S. Navy?
Yeah, thanks for having me. You know, that's a great question. I mean, there's the question of should they do it and could they do it? And you're asking me, could they do it? And I think what they can do is they can temporarily paralyze the straits. In other words, they can take an action like dumping mines, floating mines into there, moving those, as you mentioned, the cruise missile systems. Although if they move those cruise missile systems in the open, I'm pretty sure the Israeli Air Force will visit. So they could do that. But very rapidly, the U.S. Navy and U.S. Air Force would create the conditions to remove them. And I'll tell you, the regional countries, the Gulf Cooperation Council, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Kuwait will also contribute forces that help us clear the straits and maintain the flow of fossil fuels.
All right. When we'll put up a different map which shows the amount of Navy assets, and that is both ships, that's carriers with carrier air wings, and then also submarines underneath the Persian Gulf. What did you make of the fact that in this strike, it was B-2 bombers sent from Whitman Air Force Base, 37 hours round trip, but then the use of submarine-launched cruise missiles, and why is that significant?
So the submarine-launched cruise missiles gave the B-2s brought the MOPs, and I know the general talked about the massive ordnance penetrators. They uniquely could bring those. You know, since we weren't using fighter bomber aircraft like F-15s or or F-35s to apply weapons, they went ahead and turned to the ships or submarines. The submarines are good because they launch from where you're not expecting. You don't know the submarine's there. It launches. The cruise missiles stay below 1,000 feet the whole way out, and you get a surprise delivery of about the equivalent of about 50 JDAMs worth of power with about 24 missiles. So
we're looking at this. When was the last time you saw this amount of naval assets pushed into a region, and what does that allow the U.S. Navy to do?
So sadly, the general and I have seen this dance about 5 times over the last 20 years. About every 3 or 4 years, we do a maximum pressure campaign. This is actually what has broken the Air Force and Navy readiness over the last 20 years. There's a whole separate argument inside the military about how these kind of deployments break us. So I'm excited in the sense of the MOP attack is we finally did the massive attack that we always build our forces up for. So I've seen this, General Mattis did this twice while he was CENTCOM commander. That is, bring in 2 carrier strike groups, an enhanced amount of aircraft, of Air Force fighter squadrons up to 6 or 7, and the associated Army missile defense systems. So all 3 services get hit hard when we do this with extra deployments.
We're going to switch now, if we can. This is video from Press TV. That's the Iranian mouthpiece, showing their underground boat storage facilities. I guess they are either like walking through or using a drone or anything else. General, the Israeli Air Force is incredibly capable. We don't want to take away from what they did over the past 9 days, and the Israeli attacks were extraordinary. Just give us the comparison between what the Israelis were able to do, which is taking specific targets and attacking them, versus what if the Iranians decided to attack U.S. ships, the U.S. Air Force, naval carrier air wings would be able to do in, 24, 48 hours?
Leland, I think the phrase air superiority comes to mind here when you think about the ability to have cleared the airspace such that you have the permission and the permissiveness to strike at will. That means that if Iran starts to employ these types of assets, then the Israeli Air Force or the United States Air Force, the United States Navy can very easily take out those systems because they're not a threat to those aircraft that would be making those strikes.
And in terms of firepower that is able to be brought, we talk about the amount of naval assets brought in. What about Air Force assets?
I think that the combination of all of those fighter aircraft, those bomber aircraft, those electronic attack aircraft that were part of the 125 aircraft strike package from last night are a demonstration of the number and types of assets that could strike, that could jam and that would be aware via intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance of anything the Iranians plan to do.
Real quick, Iran's regional affiliates that have been extraordinarily degraded, but there are reports tonight that the Iraqi-based Iranian militias were planning attacks on the 3 U.S. bases there. It's an area you know well. You served your last tour of duty in Iraq as the senior defense official there. How worried, you're a parent and you have a kid who's at a U.S. base in Iraq, how worried should you be tonight?
I think that you should be concerned, but you should also be comforted by the fact that those 3 primary locations of American forces in Iraq are vigilant. They are well prepared, both from a base perimeter standpoint, as well as the ability to counter any activity from those proxies that could do them damage.
General, Admiral, it is always nice to be outranked and outflanked here. Appreciate you both being with us. Thank you very much.